Welcome to Musings Television, where your host, Fabian, invites you to bloom with a new perspective that will encourage, uplift, and inspire. Here he is with today's musings.
Welcome to Musings of the Mind, prose to encourage, to inspire, and uplift. I trust that we are all doing well in the midst of the pandemic, which we are traversing at this time. And on this episode of Musings, we are going to use as our muse a reflection on life, the medicine. And it goes like this. Life has a way of dispensing with us as it pleases, when it pleases, how it pleases, and where it pleases. Life is an unknown, unpredictable realism, charted by you and I insofar as our grasp of its unpredictability allows. Even in preparation, it guarantees us nothing. Take it in strides, ride its waves, flow with the tide, or go against it in wisdom. Ultimately, its dispensary, like the medicine that it is, will either make us well, even in the midst of side effects, or otherwise close the curtain of time on our existence. Yet, we must embrace it valiantly and live it purposefully, deliberately, and consciously. Embrace its dispensation. After all, what other choice do we have? What do you think? If we reflect on those words in the reality of our current circumstances, which is living through the COVID-19 pandemic, then I think that we can all associate the unpredictable nature of COVID since it made its debut on the world in Wuhan, China in 2019. It has disrupted our lives. It has come with death and to some extent despair in the process. We can say that life really guarantees us nothing. We could have tried to prepare for such an eventuality, which we would not have any certainty of happening. But even in preparing, if we were able to prepare, it would have guaranteed us nothing. Because as it has unfolded, we see the disruption, the displacement that it has caused. Most recently, and in the whole context of death, that is one of the realities of the pandemic, which we have had to face in our families, and whether it be personal families or work families. It has come home real to many of us, I'm sure, the nature of what we are going through, the storm that we are passing through, and the disruption that it has caused to our lives. But yet, what choice do we have? We have to essentially face the music of COVID, because we are yet still here. We are in the land of the living. And so we can't just throw up our arms and give up and give in. We have to embrace it purposefully, deliberately, valiantly, because ultimately we must overcome. And so we continue to journey through this storm that has engulfed the world and engulfed us personally, whether it be directly or indirectly. But we can't despair as we go through the storm. As we go through the storm, we have to continue to try to batten down, essentially. And the battening down that I think that we need to do even now, as we continue to journey through the storm, is the battening down of our minds. Yes, we need to batten down our minds, just like in a hurricane, for those of us who are in the tropics, where sometimes we have to go up on that roof when the storm's eyes passing over and it's calmest, to reinforce those zinc, for those of us who would have endured hurricanes or storms and have zinc roof. We might have to put some sandbags on it. We might have to put some blocks on it, some tarpaulin on it to reinforce it. This, as we go through the pandemic, we have to batten down our mental space. We have to curate our mental health in particular. Even in the midst of trying to preserve our physical health, we also need to curate our mental space, because ultimately we will expect, though we know in reality that there are those of our families and friends who will not come out on the other side of the storm. We can't necessarily speak for ourselves because we don't know what tomorrow holds for us. But in the hope that we will make it through this storm of COVID-19 and we will come through on the other end of the storm, it is the curating of our mental health, even in the midst of everything that we're going through, that will allow us to come out victoriously on the other side of this pandemic. And so as we go through this season of unpredictability, as we go through this medicine that life is administering to us, essentially, we have to come to terms with those realities that even in its dispensary and dispensation of the medicine that life is, that we won't always get well. And unfortunately, that has been the reality of many families. And so, in curating hope in the midst of this storm, one of those things that we must do is to encourage each other, to inspire each other, to uplift each other, as we batten down our mental health, to ensure that we can make it through the storm and that we will be victorious on the other end. We need to take those steps that will assist us in battening down, in reinforcing, in strengthening our resolve. So you might turn to some literature of upliftment. It could be music, it could be, even in this season of social and physical distancing, we will have to pivot to come up with new ways of keeping in touch with each other, so that that sense of community and belonging isn't totally, we are not totally divested of it, because the pandemic itself has revealed to us that For those who have known or come close to persons who would have had loved ones who have been impacted by the pandemic, people have to be isolated in the hospitals. You can't go to visit your loved ones. They are there by themselves and they have to journey through the storm by themselves. There's no one to come to their aid, in a sense, outside the medical practitioners. But family, which is important, is just taken away from them in the midst of this storm. And even then, as persons who are relatives, co-workers, we all have to have that mental agility to deal with this as we go through the storm. And it is going to become even more important for those of us who will pass through the storm and come out on the other end, to have our mental health intact so that we can face whatever is to come after this storm has passed, because it is going to pass. It must pass. It will pass. So we have to encourage ourselves and encourage each other to journey on. The night is long. The night of COVID-19, the night of the pandemic is long. But as sure as night turns to day, we are assured that the dawn will arise, the sun will shine, and when the sun begins to shine brighter post-COVID and the pandemic, we must be able to rise to the occasion and to carry on in the memory and the interest of those who would have gone before us, who would have not have made it through the pandemic. Carry on for ourselves and our families, our loved ones. We will need to carry on. And so encourage yourself today, because there's light at the end of the tunnel, and it is with the eyes and through the eyes of faith that we're going to be able to see that light, and in hope that we are going to be able to spring forth to the possibilities and the newness of life that awaits us on the other side of the storm. I trust you are encouraged, inspired, and uplifted by our muse on Life the Medicine. And if you were, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe so that you may be notified when the next edition or episode of our musings of the mind to encourage, uplift, and inspire is available. Until next time, take those steps to create your mental health, to build your mental health, even as you also try to maintain and build your physical health during this period. Because surely, if our minds are unbroken in the midst of this pandemic and preserved for when the pandemic has passed, we will certainly be in a better space with the ability to press on, to carry on along the journey of life. Thank you. Be safe until our next musings. Peace.
There you have it, this week's musings. We hope you found it encouraging, inspiring, and uplifting. Let Fabian know your thoughts by leaving a comment on this video. Do spread the word and invite others to subscribe to Musings Television. Until next week, may your hearts remain ever joyful.